Hi guys, welcome to our Facebook Live of the day. We have here immigration attorney Narciso Cruz alongside Bacon. How are you doing, Nat?
Hey, pretty good, Alan. Thanks for having me. Obviously, we're here with Bacon. He's our law office mascot. He's at the corner as a logo here. Everyone could see him. But Alan, what are we going to do today?
Well, today we're going to talk about some Supreme Court decisions that we have. We're also going to touch a little bit on the immigration process due to COVID-19. We're also going to indicate a little bit about the USCIS closure, and they're planning on reopening on June 4th. We'll touch a little bit on that, and as well as stimulus checks for immigrants. Some people are not getting them, some people are. We'll touch a little bit about who is it that they're not giving stimulus checks out to.
Absolutely. And we're also going to try to answer some of your questions, some viewer questions. But with that, we're going to start the intro and let's go ahead and get started.
So Narciso, as you know, the Supreme Court on Friday denied a request from New York and other states to block the Trump administration's controversial public charge rule during the coronavirus pandemic. The rule makes it more difficult for immigrants to obtain legal status if they use public benefits such as Medicaid, food stamps, and housing vouchers. Early in the term, a 5-4 court said the rule could go into effect nationwide while legal challenges played out, but the states had asked the justices to reconsider that decision given the implications of the virus. Can you explain a little bit about how that is playing out right now?
Well, Alan, that's a great question or a great comment here. So as what we know is that there's this thing called a public charge. Public charge has been around for a long period of time, but most recently what the government has done is they've changed the guidance or the interpretation of public charge. Instead of just relying on something called an affidavit of support and also the immigrants or the person who's intending to immigrate ability or past practices of obtaining cash welfare or a long-term type of medical benefit. They have changed that completely, where now lots of benefits that an immigrant obtains could make them a public charge. That includes food stamps, Section 8, or some other government aid. What we're looking at here is that we're in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. The coronavirus is really making life very difficult. People are being told to stay at home, do not come out of your homes, stay at home, shelter in, and also you're not allowed to work, and you will be getting help. And there is no help. There is no help. People are frustrated. There was a stimulus check for $1,200, but if you happen to file your tax returns with an ITIN number and independent individual tax identification number, you do not qualify for this stimulus check. That's terrible. Now, what the Supreme Court just said is that they will go ahead and implement the public charge rule. They will not stop it. They will not freeze it, given the fact that we're having coronavirus. This is a really big black eye toward immigrants and the immigration community and the advocates for immigration. As you know, Alan, we defend immigrants. We represent immigrants here at the Cruz Law Office. It's our mission to try to get them benefits, prevent their deportations, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, this is what's going on in America currently. What I can say is that USCIS has denied the implementation of the public charge rule to some extent, and that stop is almost limited to certain circumstances. For instance, Alan, if I could tell you that if a person happens to be unemployed for a period of time and their income doesn't show that they were actually making money during this period of time, a USCIS will consider the fact that coronavirus was happening and that some governors made a stay-at-home, shelter-in type order, and you could bring that evidence to USCIS, so it will not affect you negatively. But at the same time, we have this situation and people are doing their very best to survive, but this does not help at all. But yes, Alan, that is the current state of situation.
So now, as you know, a U.S. district judge on Tuesday declined to suspend federal immigration courts due to the coronavirus crisis, rebuffing advocacy groups who'd asked him to intervene. An immigration law group and 5 detained migrants with scheduled in-person hearings filed a lawsuit hoping to seize court appearances during the pandemic while new protocols are reviewed.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on right now, Alan. It seems like immigration judges, prosecutors for the Department of Homeland Security happen to be somewhat immune to the coronavirus, and everyone else gets sick.
Right.
That's very unfortunate, but that seems to be what's going on in America. As of the taping of this Facebook Live, of this YouTube video, May 2020, Immigration Court is still operating. They have suspended a lot of the non-detained people who are not in custody. They have suspended a lot of those cases and put them on pause, but people who are currently detained still have their court hearings being processed and adjudicated. Really what we're seeing is the immigration process being mechanized and being used as a weapon to deport people, as opposed to provide them something that's very valuable and to the fabric of American society, and it's called due process. The right to have a fair hearing, the right for your attorney to represent you adequately, the right for you to present all type of evidence that will support you. And it's very unfortunate that the circumstances of the coronaviruses has not allowed me personally as an attorney, as an advocate, to go to a detention center, see my client face to face, and be able to adequately advocate for him or her because of social distancing. Yet we still have these immigration court hearings going forward, and that is extremely bad. I cannot prepare my clients, and this is a terrible thing, especially when we are trying to do our very best to prevent them from being deported. Some of these clients of mine are fighting for their life, especially because they have no other home than the United States. Sometimes they're escaping persecution and they cannot return to their home country, because if they do, they most certainly will face some sort of torture, death, or mistreatment.
Thank you for elaborating on that. All right, Narciso, moving on. The USCIS office is temporarily closed to the public. They are preparing to reopen on June 4th, however. In light of the enormous impact of the coronavirus pandemic on U.S. employers, their workforces, and the economy, the U.S. government agencies that adjudicate employment-based immigration matters have decided to modify some of their operations by relaxing some of their policies, procedures, and filing requirements.
That's true, Alan. As everyone currently knows, we're facing coronavirus. A lot of offices, the courthouses, are closed to the public because of social distancing, and USCIS is included in that category. We are not having in-person interviews. We are not having in-person appointments, oath ceremonies for U.S. citizenships. We're not having biometrics for fingerprinting. We're not having those things. However, they have announced that they will slowly reopen on June 4th, 2020. What I could say, Alan, is that immigration is still working behind closed doors. They are still taking on applications. They are still renewing work permits for those who submit work permit applications. But this is the current dilemma, and this is the current state of things, Alan.
Thank you, Nar. President Donald Trump faces a lawsuit over the federal government declining to issue $1,200 stimulus checks to U.S. citizens who are married to immigrants without Social Security numbers. The litigation comes after the IRS said that only married couples in which both spouses hold valid Social Security numbers will receive the payments.
Right, Alan, this lawsuit was filed by someone who didn't want to be identified. He went as John Doe, and his argument is simple, and it's this: I will not get a stimulus check based solely on who I chose to marry. I fell in love with someone who happened to not have his Social Security number. Now, during a world pandemic, I will not get the support that my country promised me, America. This is very sad and this is terrible, but this is the current state of circumstances. Even though we are looking at a pandemic, we are looking at a life and death situation, it's still politicized. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has decided to implement and continue to implement and prosecute illegal immigration, despite the fact that illegal immigration has nothing to do with the causes of coronavirus or any type of stop to the spread of coronavirus. But this is the circumstances we're living. We're living under a very political office that unfortunately is not very that's not very astute as to obtaining the proper assistance a lot of people are asking for. And this type of lawsuit comes as a result of all this. And this is going to be a class action. A lot of people fit under these circumstances. If you got married with someone who doesn't have a social security number, and all of a sudden you didn't get that stimulus check, well, it's very unfortunate and it's very unfair, in my opinion.
All right, so let's move on to questions. And bear with me, these are in Spanish, so I'll go ahead and translate them as we go. Ricardo Silva replied, one of the questions that I have is about work permit. Will we receive the stimulus check of $1,200? Thank you very much for your answer, and God bless you, Nar.
Well, here's the thing. Lots of people who have done their taxes sometimes do have a social security number, but are not U.S. citizens or not legal permanent residents, but they did their taxes using a social security number. It's possible that they may get a stimulus check. I am not an expert in terms of the economic situation playing out here, or who gets a stimulus check and who doesn't based on their immigrant status, but immigration is different from the IRS. So if you did your taxes with social security number and you file them, then it's most likely that you will get a stimulus check. Now, Alan, some people are asking themselves, how is it possible for someone who doesn't have U.S. citizenship or legal permanent residency to have a social security number? Well, some people do have a work permit, work authorization, and that is a government form ID where someone could obtain a social security number. If you have a work permit, then that's excellent, and that's a great benefit, and most people under that circumstances also have social security numbers.
Very good. And moving on, Yolanda Mata has another question. Good day, attorney. I am about to be married in November, but my boyfriend is in El Salvador and I am in Washington. What would be the evidences that he would have to take?
Congratulations. All right. I'm happy for you. You're about to get married to someone in a foreign country from the country of El Salvador. Technically, there's two ways to immigrate someone here into the U.S. and give them the benefit of legal permanent residency, a green card. One is to marry that person and immigrate them directly. That's called consular processing. The other way is not to get married in El Salvador. Instead, immigrate them through something called a fiancé visa, a K-1 visa. What do I recommend? Well, here's the issue you're going to have to face eventually. If you decide to get married in El Salvador, immigration will request and require to issue and to provide bona fide marriage documents. What does that mean? Immigration will require you to show evidence that you are legitimately married for marriage purposes. Normally, this includes joint lease agreements or property with both names where you guys could show that you both are living under the same roof. Joint utility bills, for instance, water, electricity, cable, internet, insurance policies with both names on them, bank accounts with both names on them. These are the type of documents normally married couples accumulate throughout the marriage. So immigration will require you to show that type of evidence. You said you lived in Washington. I am not sure you're going to be able to show this type of evidence because your husband, or your future husband, I should say, is in El Salvador. And so I think possibly what's best for you to do is do the fiancé visa, the K-1. Alan, you know a lot about this. You watched that show, 90 Day Fiancé. I think there's a guy there named Big Ed. He's appearing in lots of memes, and he's going throughout the internet. But yes, we're talking about the 90 Day Fiancé, or the 90 Day, I'm not sure what the show's called, but it's very popular. And so that is going to be your route, your best route. But in order for me to give you this type of advice, I would welcome you to call me, consult with me, talk to me, and we could possibly see the hurdles or the type of evidence you might have, and we could probably choose the best path for your other half to come into the U.S.
Thank you very much. And Ricardo Silva has a comment for you. He said, I love your dog. You are a great attorney. Thank you for answering all your questions. I've learned a lot. What's the name of your dog, actually?
All right, so Alan, you already know the name of this dog. You walk him all the time. His name is Bacon. Bacon is about 6 years old, and he's a French bulldog. He's the law office mascot. He comes here all the time, and so he visits me, he visits you, and he visits everyone else.
Jack Brown has a question. My husband kicked me out of the streets. I am staying at a shelter. I have a conditional green card, and I need to remove the conditions. And I'm a victim of domestic violence.
Wow, that's terrible. That's a really bad situation, and my heart breaks to hear something so dark and so terrible. Alan, what I'm going to tell you is this: statistically speaking, it's May 2020 currently, and during coronavirus, I was looking at the news, and there's been a height of domestic violence cases. We've been told to shelter in. We've been told to stay at home. And so my heart breaks when people are unfortunately in a situation where they have to live with a person and they have to suffer domestic violence. It looks like our friend here might be using an alias, but for whatever reason, he was kicked out of home. That's so traumatic. Staying at a shelter right now. But let's go to the immigration question. So what is a conditional green card? For people who are watching this and don't really know what a conditional green card, I just want to state that there's two types of green cards: a green card for 10 years and a green card for 2 years. This is true if you married and your marriage is based on, your green card is based on marriage. You obtain your green card because you are married to a U.S. citizen or another legal permanent resident. So the people who get a 2-year green card, a conditional legal permanent residency, are people who are married for less than 2 years. So this is what the law says. 90 days before the expiration of that 2-year conditional legal permanent residence, you have to file to remove the conditions. Normally, what a person has to show is a lot more evidence that they continue to marry and have a good faith marriage to the person who immigrated them. That is unfortunately not true for this person because of the events that occurred. They've been kicked out of their house. They're staying at a shelter. They've suffered domestic violence. Terrible, terrible things. Well, the good thing is that the law does have some exceptions. And so if someone was the victim of cruelty, domestic violence, they could benefit from one of these exceptions. And they could apply for one of these exceptions, and immigration will most likely give them that 10-year green card, remove the conditional legal permanent residence. One of the exceptions is due to the fact that unfortunately, life does happen, and sometimes immigrants fall victim of domestic violence, especially because of their circumstances where they're living with someone who puts them or has them under control because of their immigration status. Alan, I hear it all the time. Sometimes someone will come into my office and says, "Attorney, unfortunately, I'm living with this person and I suffer a lot of domestic violence, but I keep staying with him or her because I need a legal status someday in this country, and I can't risk that." It's almost like a second-class citizenship within a marriage, and that's terrible, but that's the circumstances that we're seeing. But there is hope. What I would advise this person is to seek legal aid. You could call me. Hopefully you're okay. Hopefully you're safe. But in order for you to process the removal of your conditional legal permanent residence, you do need to show evidence that you were in fact the victim of domestic violence. You could show police reports, you could show emergency room check-ins. If you saw a therapist or a psychologist, you could show that evidence. If you don't have money to pay for those services or didn't have health insurance, we need a very detailed declaration in order to submit this type of application. But that's what I could say on this case, Alan. It's very unfortunate this type of case does happen. The purpose of these Q&As is for other people to listen in and see whether or not they might find themselves in similar circumstances or possibly might assist someone who they think could be in similar circumstances. But with that said, I hope everything turns out well for this person.
Thank you for that answer. And Ilma Alvarado has a comment. She says, "Very informative, attorney. God bless you. Very specific with your answers." Thank you, Alima, for that comment. All right, thank you very much, guys. For those are all the questions that we have for today. If you guys want to go ahead and get in contact with the immigration attorney here, Narciso, you can call us at 619-717-2233. We'll be more than happy to go ahead and set up an appointment and a consultation for you. Nar?
Thank you, Alan. Well, as always, I like to remind everyone to please subscribe to our YouTube channel and go ahead and touch that little bell so you can get notifications when we have new content coming out. And with that, we'll see you guys when we see you.
Thank you.